Nothing. It's not, there's no fluctuation, full throttle or not. Oh wait. Oh, I have the terminals backwards. I'm a dumbass.
My name is Zach Ellis, and welcome to my journey. I don't know where I'm going or how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to be tearing shit up every step of the way, along with a few friends, of course.
Honestly, I don't know what I'm doing.
I'll be building, modifying, repairing, fabricating, and racing every chance I get. But if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to smash the subscribe button, and of course, enjoy the video.
What's up, guys? Back out here with the E30. As you saw in the last video, we went ahead and knocked out a vacuum leak test. I got a smoker on Amazon, plugged it in, found all the leaks, which the only leak that was really a leak that I would say is the valve cover gasket. So you guys got to see me. I pulled off the valve cover, replaced the valve cover gasket. But today we're going to be knocking out a compression test on the M20 engine, just to see where the numbers are at. I would guess and say that the cylinders are probably not great. Compression's probably not great, only because the car does have over 300,000 miles on it. Is this the original engine? I have no freaking clue. So we're gonna go ahead, hop in there, pull all the spark plugs, pin the throttle open, and we'll do the compression test real quick. Alright, so for those of you that don't know what a compression tester is, I got one here. It's just a Harbor Freight one. The actual pressure that it reads might not be 100% accurate, only because, again, Harbor Freight. The biggest thing we're looking for is a difference across all the cylinders. I don't predict this thing to be extremely inaccurate, but I don't predict it to be accurate as it could be. So, pressure tester, very simple. So you got the pressure gauge, nothing fancy. It's your typical pressure gauge with the pressure release valve, and then a hose. And on the end of the hose, it has the fitting for the cylinder, which I don't know if this is the right one for the spark plug hole or not. Basically, pull all the spark plugs out, thread this into each hole individually, crank the engine over, see what the pressure builds up on the gauge, and that tells you what your compression is. And then the other thing is you have to keep your throttle wide open so the engine can pull in as much oxygen as possible. So let's go ahead, pull out all the spark plugs, and we'll get this thing set up. Cool, and now that we got all the spark plugs out, we can go ahead and put in the hose. Alright, so 120 on that cylinder. So we'll go ahead and move to the next one. Is 120. Is 120. So they're all so far just a hair over 120. Alright, cylinder 4 is low, showing 90, maybe just a hair over 90. Alright, it shows 120 as well. And cylinder 6 is showing 120 as well. Alright guys, so just finished up the compression test. As you saw, the engine's clearly not in great health. It's not dead, I wouldn't say it's dead, but it's definitely not reading the compression numbers that I was hoping to see. Not that I was expecting to see, but I was hoping to see 140 at the low and 160 as a high, because that's what the M20 manual is saying is a normal range. So at 140 to 160, as you saw, we were 120s across the board except for cylinder 4 was 90. I don't think those numbers are 100% accurate. The gauge I used, as you saw, was a Pittsburgh one, so it's a Harbor Freight job. But for 300,000 plus miles, I kind of expected it. I hoped for great compression, but I didn't expect great compression. The car runs well. It doesn't smoke or anything out of the exhaust, so I think the worn out piston rings aren't a huge concern right now. I don't think it's the reason for my funky idle. I think we have something else going on in here. We're gonna go ahead and check the throttle position sensor. We're gonna check that just to see what the resistance is. I'm assuming the throttle position switch is like any potentiometer switch. Basically, the sensor starts here. As you give it throttle, it's creating a X amount of resistance or voltage, either one, across the board, and that's how the computer knows exactly what the throttle position. So it's turning a mechanical function, which is a cable-driven throttle cable or throttle body. As you push gas, it's spinning this little sensor, which is creating more or less resistance. So in theory, I can get in there, I can shoot ohms from one end to the other, and as you give throttle, we should see the ohm reading jump up or down. All right, so we got the ohm meter all set up for the throttle position sensor. I'll show you where the sensor is real quick, and then I'll let you watch the meter while I mess with it. This thing right here where my finger is touching is the throttle position sensor. So finger is at the bottom in relation to where the throttle body is. So basically the sensor is directly beneath the throttle body. There's 3 sensors going into it, and I'll read what the guidance on the old manual says. It says, before testing the switch, check that the switch is receiving voltage. The middle prong should read 5 volts. I'm getting 4.8 volts, so we're gonna call that good. Test the switch by checking for continuity at the connector terminals on the switch. Basically, continuity means that there's resistance. Connect the ohm meter between terminals 2 and 18. So terminal 2 is in the back, 18 is in the middle, 3 is in the front. Open the throttle part way by hand. Slowly let the throttle return to its idle stop. There should be continuity, or 0 ohms, at the terminals when the throttle lever is approximately 0.20 to 0.60 millimeters from its stop. That's like, I'm not measuring that. That's ridiculous. Connect the ohm meter between terminals 3 and 18. Open the throttle slowly. There should be continuity when the throttle switch is within 10 degrees plus or minus 2 degrees of the full throttle position. So basically it's saying when the throttle switch is almost full throttle, we should be at 0 ohms. Alright, so we're going to be testing 3 and 18. So this should be ohms being read at almost full throttle. So open throttle, we're going up, and open. There it is. So almost full throttle, we get a reading. And then 0.60 millimeters off, it goes away, which is good. So 3 and 18 are reading good, which is 10 degrees from full throttle. Now we'll check 2 and 18, which should be 0 ohms at the terminals when the lever is 0.60 millimeters from the stop. Which, that's what it is. Throttle closed, it's giving us ohm readings. So basically what that says is throttle position switch is good. We're going to do the intake temp sensor. Kind of had to get this box out of the way to get to the sensor anyway, so we might as well knock it out. We want to find the sensor, the connector here. We're going to be putting ohms from pin 8 and 7 to the far side over here. Checking resistance between them. The next thing we got to do is remove this little cone thing. Basically pull back this little tab and it slides right out. So now that we've got that cover removed, inside here, hopefully you guys can see that, there's a little black tube there. That little black tube is the temperature sensor, but behind it there is a flat. I'm gonna push it. You can see the wall moving a little. Basically, we put the connector onto the 2 prongs on the side, 7 and 8, set the meter to ohms, and then when you push that flat, the ohms reading should fluctuate. Remember, 8 and 9 are the 2 over here. Now that we have 8 and 9 connected, I can fluctuate the flat to see what our resistance is. So right now it's showing open lead. I'm going to push the flat and see what it reads. So I'm not getting any sort of fluctuation. Just says open lead. Let's try 8 and 9. That means that the air intake box sensor, that thing, is bad. There is a date on it. It says October 2013, so it's a very old unit. It's probably a cheap unit for all I know. I'm gonna go ahead, get online, see if I can source one of those, whether I get an aftermarket one or, you know, a used one from somebody locally. That way we can throw that in and see if that is in fact a problem. All right, cool. So we figured out some stuff today. First thing, compression tests showed us that the engine is not in great shape. It's not terrible, but it needs to be rebuilt. Not the end of the world. I don't want to say I expected it, because the car does run well when you're moving. You know, it's got plenty of power. It doesn't smoke out the tailpipe or anything. But compression test shows the truth, and this engine's got 300,000 plus miles on it, so it's not that much of a surprise. Next thing we determined, I guess it's the math, essentially, the little sensor inside the airbox. Because both the temperature sensor, I couldn't get any sort of ohm reading like the manual saying I should get, and then the actual flapper valve, I was getting no fluctuation in ohms with that either. So I think I'm gonna start with that for now. If that doesn't fix it, I don't know. I don't know where to go from here if that doesn't fix the problem. But I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up today, and I'll pick the camera back up when I get the new parts in hand. We'll throw them on and see how the car runs.